One of the most common signs of an amateur production is the lack of detail, character, and depth in their synths. This lack of sonic interest often occurs when the synths in their track aren't layered. Synth layering is the key to any professional production, as it allows you to create a full frequency sound that is more complex. But how do we layer our sounds to create this complex sound and to not have it be muddy in our mix? My name is Daniel with Envato Tuts. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to layer your synths for professional sound. So let's get into the DAW. When it comes to layering your synths, the goal is to get a more full frequencied sound, as well as having it sound more complex. To achieve this, layers must be added, but not just any synth layers. Layers that fill out specific parts of the frequency spectrum are needed to not only keep the synth from being muddy, but for them to complement each other and work well together. Now, when layering up synths, I like to use 3 different layers. A main layer, which will carry the main timbre of the sound and be the most recognizable between all the 3 layers. And then a top layer, which will cover the high frequencies and provide a little lift in your synth. This will also add to the character of your sound. And then finally, the bass layer, or the low end layer. This layer will provide the power and weight to carry your synth in that frequency range. So I've gone ahead and loaded up 3 different patches for the main layer, the top layer, and the bass layer. So let's have a listen to our main layer here. We have a standard chord progression here. Let's have a listen. So we have a nice pluck sound, but we'd like to add a little more power and complexity to this synth. So adding in 2 more layers, our top and bass layer will fit nicely with this synth sound. Now, when creating these layers, it's important to start with the right MIDI notes. So let's start with the top layer. Let's first have a listen to our top layer. And when you choose your top and bass layers, you'll want to pick sounds that complement the main layer that you chose. And to do this, you would listen to your main layer in sound design, or pick out a preset that sounds good to your ears. Let's have a listen to the top layer that I chose. So I have a sound that is also a little plucky and provides a lot of sizzle in the high frequency spectrum, which fits nicely with our pluck sound here, our main layer. So after you've picked your top layer sound, and now it's time to choose which notes that this top layer will play. Since our main layer is playing the full chord, I like to choose only select notes for this top layer. Specifically, only 1 note in this chord. So I'll go ahead and copy on over the MIDI and open up the MIDI clip. Now really any MIDI note will work here. It's what sounds best to your ears and with the song that you're working with. But I like to choose either the top note or the second to top note in each chord to play the top layer. Adding in just these notes will give the synth a different harmonic feel. And for this, I'm going to have the second to last note being played here. So I'll go ahead and mute all the other MIDI notes. Go ahead and press 0 on our keyboard and mute these MIDI clips, or MIDI notes. Then same here, the second to last note. Mute the top one. And same here. So there we have our top layer. Let's have a listen to what this sounds like. So let's have a listen to what that sounds like with our main layer now. Let's also mix it in with our volume. And now without. So more depth and character and a fuller frequency sound is now present with this top layer. And then finally, we'll go on to our bass layer. Let's have a listen to our bass sound. So we can hear a plucky bass sound here that will also complement the top and the main layers. Again, when you choose these sounds, you want to listen to your main sound while sound designing or picking the preset, and pick what sounds good to your ears. If you're having trouble finding what sounds good, you can always listen to your favorite tracks in the genre that you're working in and listen to the different layers that are in some of the main sounds, and pick presets or sound design something that sounds similar. And now let's move on over our MIDI notes. And for our bass sound, we're just going to choose the bass notes and have those be the only ones playing. So we'll go ahead and mute all our top MIDI notes here. And again, just leaving the bass notes, or the very bottom notes. So let's have a listen to this. So this sounds a little bit low, so we'll go ahead and pitch it up 1 octave. Now with the main layer. And then with all 3 layers playing. So you can hear how much power that this bass layer adds. And then finally, we'll do a little processing. We'll just throw on some EQs on our sounds. We'll throw on an EQ on the main layer. And what we'll do is cut the sub frequencies, as the bass and the sub in our bass will be playing these sub frequencies. So we can roll this off around 100 hertz here. And then since we have a top layer playing along with this main layer that is going to be providing the high frequencies in the sound, we can dull the high frequencies in our main layer to give room for this top layer, because this part of the frequency spectrum will be filled out by our top layer. So making sure that there's enough room in the mix for this top layer to shine through and be clear is necessary. So dampening the high frequencies in our main layer will help accomplish this. And then next we'll go on over to our top layer and we'll add a low cut filter and low cut even farther here, as we don't need a lot of the mid frequencies in this sound, as it's being covered by the bass and the main layer. And again, we want to make sure that those layers come through in the mix, and removing those frequencies in the top layer will help do this. Then finally, we'll add in some group processing. And first we'll add on a compressor to glue all these elements together, and we'll set a ratio of around 3:1, not too strong of a compressor, but just enough. And we'll have the attack to around 8 milliseconds or so, as we do want the initial attack of our sound, of the plucks, to come through and not be completely squished. And the release, we'll keep it around 50 milliseconds, and we'll adjust the threshold and gain reduce a couple decibels or so. Again, we just want to glue these sounds together to make them sound like one. Then finally, we'll add in some over-the-top compression. And this over-the-top compression is an X for Records plugin that combines upwards and downwards compression to make a little bit more of an aggressive sound, a more upfront sound. And this effect works very nicely on electronic elements. So go ahead and turn the depth knob down. And we want a little upward compression. We want more detail in the sound to come out, specifically in the mid-range and the high range. So we can do this by moving the black bars to the right. Just a little bit here. A little goes a long way with this plugin. And with the depth knob, we'll adjust as we listen to the layers. Without. And with. So the OTT gives the sound a nice lift in the mix. So you can see with proper sound selection, the careful choosing of our MIDI notes for each specific layer, and a little processing to the individual layers and the groups of layers, we can create a professional sounding synth.